So guys, liquidity and how we view it and use it, right? Like a lot of your traditional sort of SMC places or whatever you want to call it will tell you to look for the sweep, blah 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 blah, right? Never trade from equal lows, all of this sort of stuff, right? We don't fully agree with that. We look at it in a slightly different way, more like you should react to the sweep, because like liquidity is created by order flow, right? And order flow gives you that basis, right? And it's more important. So like you can see even here, right? You get a decent trade off of equal lows, right? You get this level of supply taken out, you know, depending on your stop size, that's 1 to 10, 1 to 20, whatever, right? But yeah, like how we view it is more as like anything in the market, right? It's just unfilled or it's orders, right? So if we start that and we try to look at it more as a profile as such, right? Like that being, where is there more available liquidity at this present time? The market will likely target that in line with structure, in line with expectations, in line with all of this sort of thing, right? So yeah, like if we just start to study this market, right, we can see that we've had this big pool of liquidity built down here, right? And just for like ease of use, I have like this X here for liquidity gets taken and this arrow for available liquidity, right? But yeah, so the idea of unfilled orders, right? So we know that buyers have their orders below, or they have their stops, etc., right, below here, right? So we have a bunch of sell orders. We also know that there'll be like breakout traders trying to trade. If this level gets taken, they'll be looking to take shorts, right? And then we can see that price eventually comes down and runs all of that liquidity, right? Takes everything out, generates even more equal lows here, right? So now we have to ask ourselves the question, right? Where do we have available liquidity? And this is, you know, we're just going to build these ideas without looking at structure or anything like that, right? Just based on liquidity for ease of use, right? And now we can say we have more available liquidity to the upside, right? We have this here. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. We have this. Right, so we know that likely the market is going to need to take some form of liquidity to continue in whatever it wants to do, right? So we get no break of structure here, we get the supply range taken out, right? And then we can start, this is where you can start building like really good narrative for your days as well, right? So we know that we have a demand level here, right? We'll just draw this in very quickly without refining it or anything like that, because this isn't a supply and demand video, this is a liquidity video, but just to give you some form of context. Right, so we come up, right? We see liquidity generated here, so you know, timing with London Open, market's got more available liquidity above here than it does right below this low, so the market moves to the upside, right? Run of liquidity wherever you want to put it, below here, right? And then the market moves to the upside, right? So cool, we've got that first thing, right? But overall, we're looking at like taking out this liquidity, right? For various reasons, it's a daily week high, it's equal highs, you know, like it slowed down a leg, whatever. But what we need to see now, right, is short-term liquidity generated, right, so that we can take the trade, right? Because right now, structure is still bearish, right? But we get this liquidity created here, right? So what happens now, so all of this liquidity is gone, so we don't need to really be aware of this. We know that we may now, we've run buy side liquidity, so we may get a sell to run sell side liquidity. And if we generate, like here with structure, right, because it's bearish, if we start getting like a V-shaped recovery away from this, right, we want to be cautious of taking buys here because we have equal lows and structure is bearish, right? But if we get liquidity generated here, we have this big liquidity pool here. So if we take this liquidity first and then target, like what are we going to target? We're going to target the next available liquidity, right? So market doesn't give us a V-shaped recovery. Market gives us equal highs to target, right? What's it just done? Right, it's just taken out this liquidity here. Right, so next likely target is liquidity above the high. Bosh, straight through. Right, now the market's searching for this liquidity up here, so we can just keep playing the ranges, right? Like we know this stuff from other videos. Continues to move up, generates liquidity here, runs liquidity here, you know, just keeps on going, right? Now cool, the next morning, what have we got, right? So we get like liquidity generated below here, we have another supply and demand level, right? So again, we want to see that run of liquidity into this area, right? And then we have little equal highs here that we can target. Right, we've got a run of liquidity here below this trend line. You know, we know that there's a bunch of liquidity in the market, right? It's why we don't try to predict it. We just react to what it is doing, right? So we've taken out that. You know, we get another run on liquidity into this, right? And the market continues to move up. Right, cool. Now the market reacts to something to the left and starts to give us a V-shaped recovery. Right, so now in this case, right, where's there going to be more liquidity? Well, probably down in these sorts of areas, right? So now the market may well need to gather more liquidity because there's no liquidity here, right, that we can target in the short term, so it needs to generate liquidity above these highs, right, so it can continue to move up, right? Here we go, right, we run the low initially, right, so cool, now we get a reaction to that liquidity, equals 2, right, now we need to look for next liquidity points, right, there's potentially an area we could look for shorts depending on confirmations, it's reasonably priced, blah blah blah, but we have this point of liquidity, right, inducement, whatever we want to call it, below this to come into this range here, and let's see if we generate, well, we've already generated liquidity down here that can be our target, right? Now the market moves back up slowly, you know, generates more liquidity there, right? Generates more liquidity, so we're seeing these runs, right? So we're seeing these filling of sell orders, right, because they're taking out buys above the high. Right, where's our next liquidity pool? Our next large liquidity pool is down here. Right, we've taken out this. No, we haven't quite taken out that now. Generate more liquidity, run the inducement. Right, where are we going? You know, like structure's bearish. Our liquidity profile is very, very bearish at this point in time because we've taken out all of this liquidity. We have nothing really above this high. You know, this is a strong protected level, right? Someone wants to build equal highs, right? Here. Right? To run this into some form of demand, and you know, we can figure out these levels from other things, right? But you know, and look, even here, we have equal lows, you still get a good trade away from it. You know, if that's the only trade you take that week, that could be a 1 to 15. You know? Who knows? But yeah, like, build more and more liquidity all above here. Alright, so we're building this strong case for buys once we take out the rest of this liquidity. You know, we generate more liquidity across here. You know, the market just does it the whole time. We generate more liquidity across here. Right, so again, now let's see what side the liquidity gets taken first. Right, liquidity is taken. here and here and here, right? So we've got that huge filling of sell orders, so loads of buy orders entering the market, right? And where is our next available liquidity pool, right? Like, you see, right, then just moves on up to take out the liquidity above the highs, right? Like it does it the whole time. It generates these massive equal highs here, bosh, straight through, and look at the aggression it goes with, right? And look, we've dropped liquidity here, so now we've got a case for price coming back down to here potentially to run the liquidity into this to continue EOF or whatever, right? But it's this whole thing of don't try to predict it, right? Yes, if you're taking a trade from equal lows, depending on your whole story, blah, 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 right? Like here, if we're taking this trade, we know it needs to be managed, right? It's not going to run the high, most probably, right? But it's still a good trade, right? Because we have this liquidity pool generated here. We've run liquidity into this well-formed, not strong, but well-formed low, right? And we've got then this cause for buy to another sell up here to run this low, right? Into demand level, through the liquidity pool, right? Continues 4-8 structure, and off it goes. But you see how it constantly does this whole generation, right? Take off, switch in order flow, target, right? And it can really help us when we understand it properly to build that narrative, right? I mean, obviously we're going to go over this in a fair bit, like more depth over Zooms and stuff like that, but just to give everyone the basis of the concept that we use, it's all about this generation, how you can use it throughout the day to help you frame up ideas, right? Like over here, this is a great example. This is a perfect example, right? If we start getting a V-shaped recovery here, do not buy from here because we are likely to move down and take out this liquidity. However, if we generate equal highs here, we have a case for taking a long, right? Yeah, I mean, all the different types like trendline liquidity, range liquidity, equal highs, equal lows, structural liquidity, they're all covered in the PDF. But yeah, hopefully that all makes sense to everyone. And again, like we will do much more in-depth videos on this and all of these subjects. You know, these are just want to get you up and running for now. So yeah, cool guys, peace.